Hello, everybody. Welcome back to this fascinating podcast that we are trying to figure out a beautiful title for. My co-host is Dr. Carlos Walter in the United States. Welcome, 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 Carlos. Lovely to see you today.
Likewise.
So in the sharing of the knowledge that is coming through with our podcast, we are brainstorming ideas, and maybe we'll throw it to our audience to also help us come up with a captivating title. Healing Conversations was one title that came up today. Inspirational Conversations might be another, but we will brainstorm and see what spirit is guiding us to put out into the world. What do you think, Carlos?
Yeah, I feel a little disappointed and at the same time inspired. Disappointed because I thought Healing Conversations would be a good name.
Yes.
Because my intention is to be an instrument of healing. And if I express something, I really wanted to help somebody, benefit somebody. It's not me wanting to heal. It's not me wanting to do something. But in the inquiry of who we are, we can have steps. And these steps start with a connection, with a relationship, the loving awareness of the other one. Many times I say in situations like this, when I say goodbye to people that I've never met, I love you. And what does this guy mean by I love you?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that love is not just a feeling or a sentiment. Love is a consciousness of recognizing in you the sameness as in me. Now, we're not the same, but we're equals. And we're equals in front of this tremendous, tremendous universe through which we're traveling. The other day, I was sitting in the front of the house, and there is this tree, this beautiful tree. And instead of looking at the solidity of the tree, I was looking through the space that the branches left. So I saw heaven. No, I saw the sky. And I'm sitting there in a rocking chair, and I feel instantaneously that I am a passenger of this vehicle we call Mother Earth, we call Spaceship Earth. But it's not a wild spaceship going anywhere. It's moving at a speed that we could not tolerate if we would just be exposed to it in the translational and in the around the sun, in the orbit. We're going very fast. But we are one body with this planetary system that is the solar system, which is our creator. For so many millennia, people would love the god of sun gods. In Egypt, it was the ultimate, even though Sirius was the star that guided them. Now, if we look at this dynamically, and we see that we're traveling, and we're all traveling together, so we have to develop a consciousness of being a species, not a consciousness that you and I are the other. And then we, like somebody was telling me actually today, the best business are weapons. The weapons have started in America in the 19th century, the 1800s. And there was one weapon, a rifle that everybody bought called the Winchester. And I'm not going away from the central scene. But when 1860 or 1840, Winchester started selling these weapons, these rifles, and then he died. And his daughter inherited $3,000 million of 1870. So the amount of money that this killing mentality has produced on Earth, everybody is fighting everybody, and those that sell the weapons benefit financially. They benefit from war, they benefit from killing, they benefit from death. And we need to change that consciousness to find a way that we can benefit each other and ourselves with a life-oriented philosophy, not a war. But for that, we need to realize, as I was saying before, that we're a species. We are maybe the only species that doesn't want to identify with being that. While I'm talking, there are two dogs here sitting with me, and they have no problem in being dogs. I call them dog beings instead of human beings. The people look down at animals, and they look down at animals because they feel that they're higher. And they look down at Oriental people, the West, because they think they're better. They look down at Jews because they have their story. They look down at African American or African in general. And this looking down instead of looking up, this looking down contracts the entropy of life. And here we sit, trying to bring the awareness that there is a higher, not getting too sophisticated or spiritually and quotes new age stuff, but there is a higher way of observing from a higher place. The eye that is at the top of the pyramid is really here. And the crown is above our physical head. So when we begin to see the world from there, we see that we're traveling, we're on a journey, and we're all on the same journey. This democratic idea that because I feel something, I am that, is psychotic many times. I'm speaking as a psychiatrist. Because somebody comes in and says, I feel that I'm a bird. Try to fly. You'll collapse. But I feel it, so I'm identified with this. And coming back to center, we need to discover our identity. Human beings have one problem. They've forgotten that they're human beings.
That is an interesting perspective. And that forgetting, I always say that a lot of people sleepwalk through life.
Yeah.
We are sleepwalking, not conscious of who we truly are,
Right.
Not even aware of the others that we bump into every single day. And it's when you are fully present in every moment with every interaction with other human beings that the magic happens in those moments. A lot of times we meet and your monkey brain is saying, oh, I've got an appointment, I've got to go to the next appointment, or you're thinking about what happened in the office before you left. And there's another human being in front of you and you fail to connect and be present and look them in the eye and hear what they're actually saying because your brain is all over the place. So this being the condition of being human, what techniques, what tools, what can we do to be present in every single moment and not miss the magic?
Put the monkey mind to work. And the work that I learned in India in the early stages of meditation was, imagine that this monkey is next to a palm tree and you tell it to go up and it goes. And then you tell it to go down and it goes. And then you make a simile with yourself because the monkey mind is not external, it's internal. It's all over, actually. It's in the news for sure. It's in the expectations. It's in the desires. It's in the wants. It's in the insecurities. It's everywhere. So we need to calm down and take our monkey up the palm tree through inspiration and down the palm tree through expiration. And the monkey begins to become a servant and not a master. And I just changed the frequency of my expression because as we bring this energy up and allow it to be down, we enter in a different state of awareness. We enter in a state of meditation. And we become, as you said, present in the only thing, space, time, which is an illusion, that we can. And it's called NOW, now.
And there is only now, and now, and now, and now, and now.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I've had experiences in my life that I cannot explain how or why things have happened to me. And people say to me, Gertrude, you're born under a lucky star. You're such a lucky person. But I believe you create your luck. It's in who you are being.
Yes.
Every waking moment that the magic unfolds. And I think once you become aware of how you are being, you can then transform how you behave and how you interact and how you bring yourself to the present moment in every interaction as well.
So this is so beautiful to hear you. Why is it beautiful in my perception? Because I am fully with that. So here are two people in two places in the universe, in the world, one in the universe, traveling through the universe and transmitting a similar message. Going back to this naming of healing conversations, I thought of it the other day because when I do therapy, I don't want to call it therapy. I don't want people having sessions of therapy. So I changed it. I even changed it on my website, healing conversation. Don't expect I'll solve the problems for you. We're going to have a conversation, change the energy, and maybe look at it. Like I had one guy that says, I had so many problems to share with you. And as we're talking, I don't know where they are. The focus was different. Now, we realized by looking at the wonderful internet that a lot of people have had the idea and called their counseling healing conversations. But then you asked me, what would be a good logo? And the first thing that came to mind, and I'm looking at some beautiful trees here as we speak, there was a tree, because my wife is really teaching me to have respect for the trees. She thinks they're the most evolved beings on the planet. And I began to spend a lot of time with them, and I look at the space in which they are more as the form and what space comes through. They're like windows in the spaceship. And we look and we see that other ones have also put a tree. So this is an idea in the Platonic sense, an idea that's floating around and that we can connect with. Same thing as we can agree or disagree with certain forms of expression, because that's all they are. But at the same time, we need to shift the focus instead of agreeing and disagreeing with the speaker to how does it affect me and what inquiry do I need to do? I already realized that when I breathe in and I breathe out with mindfulness, as they call it today, I calm down. And when I calm down, I feel my heart opening, because it's not the domain of the monkey mind thinking non-original thoughts, because it's only repeating and rearranging what it has heard. But there is such a thing as piercing through, as Krishnamurti would do and say in his talks and in his books. It is not about solving everything. It is about understanding how we have it, how we live it, how we create our own destiny.
I like that. And a lot of times we forget that we are creating our own destiny. We think things are happening just by default. We have no control over what's really going on. And yet we have full control, absolutely full control of everything that is happening in our lives. But I think we don't want to take that responsibility.
Right. Because responsibility has been confused with words such as blame, shame, guilt, even applause. You did well. But that's nothing to do with responsibility. Responsibility starts with the willingness to acknowledge that I am source of everything that's happened to me.
Yes. It's a difficult one to swallow because it's easier to blame it on external forces and things around us.
Because we're used to have enemies. We think that our survival depends on defeating the other. It's like Cain and Abel. You know, it's in the beginning of the story, of that particular story. Enmity. And enmity leads to war. And ultimately, you know, I was just, before we began, I was speaking with an old friend of mine. We've been friends 50 years. And talking about this silly way in which President Putin, for his own sake, for his own appearance, for his own image, for his own ego, has stopped the world.
Well, the ego has a way of dominating and taking over. And the more power you have, the more powerful the ego grows. You know, I grew up in Zimbabwe with a dictator president who was my hero as a child. You know, when we were struggling for independence against the British, they went to war and he led that war that won Zimbabwe's independence. And then after one term of being in government, he got a second term, and then he changed the constitution to make himself the life president. Right. And that was the demise of Zimbabwe. We saw our country deteriorate to nothingness. And we watched him demonstrating what he had learned from our colonial predecessors. And he did exactly what they did to his own people. Yes. And brought a country down to its knees that was the breadbasket of Southern Africa. So how do we change this way of being? Especially when it comes to leadership. I've been having these conversations with quite a few people this week that it feels like the world is in a need of an infusion of a nurturing and feminine energy that is missing.
Yeah.
What is the solution?
We have to see that feminine energy these days comes through men and through women.
Yes.
That this right brain, global, holistic, compassionate, loving perception of reality is a function of balance of the two brains that we have. We say, at least scientific research has proven some of it, that the left brain is logical, linear, to the point, and the right brain is all-encompassing, like a mother that holds a baby. And one, we say, is for action, and the other is for compassion. And compassion starts with ourselves. We need to love ourselves, not in an egotistical or narcissistic way. We need to love the life that we have been given. It's so powerful to feel compassion for all the things that go wrong in our choice, in our creation. So instead of being a victim, we transform into being a giver. And the giving starts at home. Charity starts at home. And I don't mean home family. No, it starts at inner home, in the temple of all temples. this body that we subject to so many penalties. You know, I'll give you a personal example. I have a mild COPD, and I never smoked. But I grew up in Santiago, Chile, one of the most polluted places on the planet. So I didn't have vicarious smoke, I had vicarious pollution. Now, why don't we begin to love ourselves to the point of not accepting pollution? And there's so much of it. There is electronic pollution, CO2, other particles, methane, and negative thinking. The biggest pollution is negative thinking. What is that? It is a thought form that affects humanity, bringing us humans to the condition of being stuff, usable stuff, instead of majestic energies. Instead of discovering what we are, we live in the fear of the future, in the fear of what could happen. So we defend ourselves against imaginary things that our neighbor can do to us. And we don't connect like we're connecting today. But people fall into the distrust of opening their hearts to everybody and to anybody. When we do open our hearts, sometimes it hurts. But sometimes, or the majority of the time, there's a lot of joy to be experienced in being a passenger through the galaxy. And the galaxy is moving, which makes me think that it's all one body moving into this expansion of light, of consciousness, of love, of novelty, of familiarity even, because we know that we're going to a place called home. All religions have hijacked this experience, this notion, and sold it to their public as a method of being conditioned. And some people get happy being conditioned. But when we break through the conditioning and we really realize that what's being said is true and achievable in our lifetime.
Wow. Now, as you're talking, I am so reminded that the enemy is within.
What enemy?
We're talking about how we look outside of ourselves and try and blame and put responsibility on external forces. And yet everything starts, like you said, at home. It starts within you.
Yeah. But we're in training. We still blame. We still judge. We still evaluate. We still do everything that everybody does. And we need to retrain, if you will, ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not one day. You know, when people come to my seminars for 4 days, I say I only want 4 days, 4 times a year. That's how much attention this work requires.
Mm-hmm.
And what they don't hear is that in between the retreats, you have to do your own work.
Yes.
It's not to be there pushing you, training you, even inspiring you. Yes, it's an individual task.
Mm.
And it's a task. You know, it's interesting that the consciousness of we has been the gift of COVID.
Yes.
because it's affecting everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a king or a dictator or a servant, or you are a regular skin encapsulated ego doing a job. Everybody got affected by COVID. And when I realized that I had COVID on the fourth day, I said, I am COVID. I'm COVID to humanity. I'm COVID to everything. I'm COVID to the planet. What does that mean? The thing goes in, the virus goes in and wants to use my DNA to reproduce itself, and it succeeds.
Mm-hmm.
Damages in the meantime, but it wants to live. I want to live, so I have this house. I don't know before this house was built if there wasn't a beautiful tree, like 2 trees that I have in front of me.
Mm.
I didn't personally, but somebody did. Some other predator did, like COVID. When I said I am COVID, the symptoms went away.
That's interesting. A very, very interesting perspective for sure. So in these healing conversations, I guess the healing comes in the understanding of the universe, understanding the glue that holds everything together. What happens when you have people in your sphere, in your environment, who are not ready to listen and to hear? How do you get through to people like that?
Maybe finding out what language they talk or they speak it, and intending, because intention is very powerful, that someplace in the communication there will be a heart-to-heart moment, which is the only way both to convince. I'm not meaning the convincing of manipulation, but to convince that there's a different viewpoint in reality. And sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's not. And some people say it wasn't their time. But I think we're all here in the same time traveling. We are in a long, long story repeating ourselves for millions of years. We say for 10,000 years because there is some data of this agricultural shift that came from hunters to settlers. It's only 10,000 years. Now I say, but it's a long time. But probably with millions of years traveling together. And we still don't realize we're traveling together. And it feels so emotional, because if we would be on the same train and the front of the train has no relationship with the back people of the train, let's say, we're still getting to the same place. We're still moving in the same direction. And there are 2 ways of traveling: awake or asleep. Still get to the same destination. I chose humbly to be awake, but I fall asleep sometimes.
But you're aware you fall asleep sometimes. I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
It's the awareness.
Yeah.
But some people aren't even aware that they're asleep, and that's where the danger lies.
Yeah. And if they have power and they're asleep, they will fulfill their dream. Cost of Ukrainians, Lithuanians, Belarusian, in this particular savage case in history, because this is not right. And nobody can do anything. That's our impotence. We can't say, Mr. Putin, your time is over. Go higher. You're the richest man in the world, but don't destroy more people, because you're destroying your own people. I mean, there are casualties in the invader also, and there are definitely many more casualties in the invaded ones. And this shows how weak and how poor in power we are. We have no influence. You know, we've done some sanctions, and the sanctions have made Russia richer and us poorer. The West doesn't know how to deal with Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan occupied half of Asia and burned the villages. And Putin is trying to burn the villages. When I hear the news that a missile fell into a wall and only 17 people died, but there are hundreds and hundreds of wounded. Why? Because they went to shop something? That's not right. And the understanding that we're all on the same ship, the understanding that we're all get somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the front might see it before, but once we land, we'll all be together.
Yeah. Fascinating.
So when I said healing conversations, yes, we need to heal ourselves, you and me, but maybe in our dialogues, somebody picks up something and says, I want that too.
Mm-hmm. And the honest truth is, you can only work on yourself and be a source of inspiration for others. And that's what we should be striving towards on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How can I focus on me and inspire others to focus on themselves as well?
Only by doing it.
Mm.
And sometimes I have had rejecting attitudes. Ah, you're crazy. Oh, this doesn't happen. Oh, what are you thinking about? And then a few pages in the history of the experience, what we call time, but a new encounter. I am talking about something very concrete, a classmate of mine that totally belittled everything I was saying 50 years ago. And then he had some problems with his wife, and they came to a retreat. And I'm not going to say the exact word that he says at the end, because it's ping, ping, ping. We don't say those words on television or on podcasts or things like that. But this works. Thank you. He still couldn't let go of the previous idea that this wasn't something I excels wonderful, but it helped. It worked. And I'm fine with that. I mean, I don't care if it's called high or low. I really don't care. Because, you know, being 75 has an advantage. A physical, chemical, material advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Action in the corpus callosum, in the brain, of fibers that connect the right with the left increases with age in the brain.
Okay.
So we're a little more meditative, a little more calm, a little more balanced, a little bit, because the connectedness within is taking place at a higher level than when somebody's 40. And this is proven. There is research on this in England, that more fibers get activated in the crossing over from one brain to the other.
Yeah. Absolutely awesome. So hopefully with time, we will all gain that level of wisdom. In the meantime, just being aware of how you are being in every waking moment, and remembering that there is only now, And now,
Absolutely.
and now, and now.
Absolutely. I told you once about my experience when I was 14. I was at a club and I stayed present in the eternal now as I was seeing chronological time shifting. And I decided to live outside of time. And I think that I've lived outside of time this life.
Well, a beautiful lesson for us to all take away. Living outside of time. Absolutely wonderful. So we have to come up with a name for this podcast. It could be Healing Spiritual Conversations. We will sleep on it and come back to all of you with a title the next time we connect. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Dr. Carlos, thank you again for reconnecting with me today.
Thank you so much. It's always an inspiration. It's always a pleasure. And it's love, because it's a recognition of the same consciousness. One as the other, others as in myself. And that is love.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye for now.